To sense and to perceive, what's the difference? To kind of understand this better, let's consider human beings as subjects. So, human beings have evolved over time in terms of so many things, not just by existing but by creating. So, uh, to do that, you need to kind of have different levels of processing. So, you interact with the physical world around you by sensation, but there is something that's unique about human beings where you also, have a subjective experience of perception. So sensation would be along the lines of your objective perception, where, there is a stimulus and you do, sense it. There is, awareness of stimulus, or, you know, uh, there is awareness that there is no stimulus. But when you're looking at perception, this is a little bit more complicated because it is subjective in nature. So sometimes this is like a very common experience in the 21st century because all of us use smartphones, and there, like maybe you're texting someone, consistently for a little while, or, over a short period of time, and you put your phone down, but then you kind of feel a sensation, you feel a vibration, but then there's nothing really happening. So in this case, right, to kind of understand the concept of sensation and perception, would you what would you label this? Is this sensation or is this perception? I hope you said this was perception because clearly there was no stimulus, but then there was some, thing that kind of happened in your brain that you kind of perceived it. So this is an interesting concept that we as, mental health, uh, we as psychologists are interested because this is a very unique mental attribute, and the implications of this understanding, you can kind of think about, and just uh, you know imagine like all the things that would be different if these two things kind of didn't exist in the way that they do exist right now. So to kind of understand this a little better, let's kind of review this concept of sensory transduction. So this is kind of basically how the biological mechanism works, right? So you have the physical stimulus, right? Let's kind of say that you let's look at the visual sensation. So light would be what is traveling through, into your eyes, right? So your eyes capture light, which then goes through this process of sensory transduction, where the light energy gets converted into neural energy, electrical impulse. So there is a change in terms of the energy, and then once, because our brain processes things through chemical and electrical impulses, right? So once the electrical impulse is created, the electrical signal is processed, and that is how we kind of understand the world around us. So somewhere in between there is something that happens where we are able to perceive things that we don't sense, and we are able to sense things that we don't necessarily perceive. So this is a very interesting thing that I'm guessing most of us experience, but do we sit and think about like these things? But the fact that we are studying psychology as a science gives us the opportunity to sit and think about it and figure out answers to questions that still need answering. So I hope this is something that makes sense. So you have the physical stimulus, and then you have the energy conversion that happens, and then electrical impulse is understood. So this is true for your other sensations as well. For example, for your in terms of your auditory processing, you have vibrations, that is something that gets converted into electrical impulse, and then it is processed in your brain for you to kind of interpret what that means and act accordingly. So moving on, let's apply this concept of this interaction between sensation and perception. So this is a very simple question. So this is something that all of us have kind of done in our lives. So imagine you have a 250 ml glass of water. How much sugar do you need to add to this glass of water for you to be able to taste the sugar in the water, for you to be able to taste the sweetness of the water, of the solution? So you all, I'm guessing, know that you need to add like a substantial amount of sugar before you can, taste it. So isn't that kind of interesting? So you add sugar, there are existing, let's say, like you kind of pick out, one, two, three, four crystals and then put it in those tiny crystals. You for a fact know that you're not going to be able to taste it. You're not going to be able to sense that there is sugar in that water. But if you put like a substantial amount, like let's say, you put 1 teaspoon of sugar in there, you are probably going to be able to taste that. So isn't that interesting? So there is a physical stimulus, but for you to be able to perceive that physical stimulus, it's going to take a little bit more, for you to kind of uh, understand that there is something there. So there is a threshold of sort for you to be able to, say that, okay, this is a substantial amount of energy that needs our attention, and then the conversion happens, and then your brain's processing it. So if you kind of again think about other sensations, right? So uh, how much uh, how much intensity do we need to feel things? So when we're looking at auditory sensation, how loud do we need the music to be, to kind of actually really listen to the music? How intense do we need the touch to be if we're gonna call someone who's sitting right in front of us? Do I need to kind of do a full blown punch, or can I just softly touch, or do I need to kind of touch and press a little bit? So these are like physical things that we kind of get into every single day without thinking about it, but we do know that you know uh, just because the stimulus is present doesn't mean that the perception is going to happen, because we have something that acts as a threshold before we actually respond to it neurologically. So this brings me to the next slide that we have. So this whole idea of understanding sensation, perception, and the implications of the interaction between both of them in human experience is something that is studied in this field of psychology. It's called psychophysics. So I'm just going to read the definition here. You can follow along with me. The study of the relationship between the physical aspects of stimuli and our psychological experience of them. So what we experience is objective, which is something that we perceive, we understand as our objective reality, and we also understand that there is some level of interpretation that goes into it, and that kind of creates this whole layer of psychological understanding. So anything has an objective understanding, and then subjective understanding. If you kind of have to think about your favorite color, right? It's just a color, but the fact that it's your favorite color changes the way that you look at things. So I hope you kind of enjoyed this class. I hope it made you think a little bit more about the smallest things that we as humans get to do. I hope you appreciate it more, and I hope you question it more, and I hope you kind of are curious enough and intrigued enough to ask and answer some of those questions that you might kind of experience along your journey with your education. I'll end my presentation here. Thank you so much for listening. All right.